Hey, animal science class. It's been a few days since I did a screencast, so I wanted to pick up with you all, catch up and just kind of review some of the things that we've been talking about. I really just turned you loose on sheep breeds. Kind of felt that would be the best way to go about that particular unit, just because there's not much I could tell you that you couldn't read from the most part through the Kahoot, through the charts, through the compare and contrast. It seems like everybody's got those breeds down. Wool as an American industry, we kind of strayed away from it through following World War II. It just it's such a hot fiber, and one that really took some engineering to realize how versatile it was, and now we're kind of seeing a resurgence in the use of wool because it's so durable. I've got wool clothing, wool socks, wool sport coat, wool sweater, and they're many years old now, and they are still very functional. So, the big takeaways from that unit are that wool is diverse and it's strong and it has a lot of traits in it. It helps with a lot of the byproducts that we use from makeups to lotions. But just know that we don't use it in a lot of things that we think are wool probably aren't. They're probably synthetics. Um, you know, so anyway. Guys, we're going to move on to sheep facts. I just want to talk about a few husbandry things this morning or afternoon, whenever you watch this, and then I'll put some questions on the site for you to answer and share with me, and then we'll kind of wrap up sheep next week. So, one thing that is interesting about ruminants is that they actually have a size, and their teeth changes as they age. So when lambs are born, they're born with only bottom teeth. They have no molars at that time, and then they have a dental pad on the top. And the same is true of cattle and goats and deer and camels. All ruminants are designed that way. So when my family and when we go to these sheep shows, like at the state fair, young children, they always say, "Is that sheep going to bite me?" I say, "No, they don't have top teeth. They can't bite you. They could nibble, but they're not going to break the skin. Horses will bite you. They will clip your finger right off if you're not careful. Break the skin pretty easily." But lambs, they will have 8 baby teeth on the bottom. When they are 1 year old, so about 12 months, they'll lose those 2 middle teeth, and then 2 big teeth will form. When they're 2 years old, they'll lose the next 2 outer teeth, and then those 2 will grow in, and they'll have 2 small outer teeth, or 4 small outer teeth, and then 4 big inner teeth. 3 years, we have 6 large teeth, and then 2 baby teeth still, and then at 4 years old, all of those teeth are large, and then they start to wear pretty rapidly, and at about 8 years, they're getting pretty thin because that animal is getting old and has done a lot of chewing in their life. So, yeah, interesting fact. We can tell a sheep's age by their teeth. When lambs are born, they're born with tails, and we remove those tails through a process called docking. So if you think back to the sheep parts that I went over, the dock is where the tail is or was. Now, some of the breeds that you looked at, the Katahdin, they are one of the hair style breeds, and we just leave that tail in place because they have hair. They don't have this wool fiber that is going to act as a magnet for manure. So we've got here a sheep. The sheep has a tail, and you can see that there are some manure tags on that sheep's tail and on its hind end. Sheep, unlike cattle, they do not have this ability to pick their tail up when they defecate. So the droppings kind of just fall out. And what happens when some of those droppings run past the wool is they accumulate there. And when they accumulate, they become this great breeding ground for insects, specifically maggots. So to eliminate any of that manure hanging on and becoming this harboring area for insects, we just remove the tail. And you can see here we've got this lamb and the tail has been shortened. So that process is called docking. There's a couple of different methods for docking. The most common today is banding. Banding just takes a very strong rubber band with a very small little hole, and we have a tool that expands that very strong rubber band out. We put the rubber band around the tail, we remove the tool, and the rubber band stays. As that rubber band continues to contract in, it cuts off blood flow to the tail, and the tail just falls off. When we get to, let's see if this will work here. Larger production farms, we will use this tool called an emasculator to actually sever the tail.
Heather's going to demonstrate how to use the double crush tail docker. This lamb is about a day and a half to 2 days old, well bonded with the mother. So she's going to use the blue leg crook to catch the lamb and bring him out of the lambing pen. She's going to take the lamb and secure him between her legs. Try to cut that tail to where it still protects the back end of the lamb. She's going to leave about an inch and a half on that tail. And hopefully the lamb will cooperate a little bit here. Thread the tail in through the double crush, making certain that the double crush portion of the is against the rear of the lamb, and push down. And as she pushes down, it cuts the tail cleanly through. It also crushes that tail and crushes the capillaries and the blood vessels. Hold for the count of 10, and then you can release that, and it should be very little or no bleeding at all. And if you do get some bleeding on some larger lambs, you can simply take some blood stop and put that on there, and it'll stop the bleeding. And then also during fly season, we usually spray a little Catron 4 on the tail to keep the flies from bothering and picking at the scab.
So you can see there, we can remove that tail by cutting. That particular tool called an emasculator will actually cut, and it crimps those capillaries. Sheep have very few nerves in the tail, so it's not a painful process, really. And it is something that's done for their own good. Another method, when we talk about high production sheep flocks, and we think back to Australia and New Zealand, where we've got millions and millions of sheep, we've got this tail docking iron.
Found their feet quick to use. They searing iron many years ago.
So in this method, it is fast-paced because they have hundreds of lambs that they're going to process in the day, and processing in this form is what we'd call working them. But this tool is called a docking iron. So what it does is it has a blade that clamps down, and then that iron gets hot, and it actually cauterizes those capillaries, so there's no blood.
And we found them excellent to use. They're safe. The lambs are certainly on their feet quickly and get mothered up really early. We found with rubber rings that some lambs got mismothered. The mothers would take off with one and leave the twin behind. So the searing iron, used correctly, it sears the tail. There's no blood, and it heals quickly. The big thing too about tailing is we've got to get that tail off to stop fly strike, and so with the searing, and it certainly makes a clean cut and heals very quickly, and there's no problem with fly strike.
So just another option, something for you to be aware of in the docking process. A common misnomer when we talk about our nomenclature: lamb. Lamb is meat or the muscle from sheep that is less than 1 year old. When sheep are over a year old, we refer to that muscle as mutton. And as sheep age, the flavor in that muscle changes significantly. At the barbecue festival here in Danville, if you go out to Moonlight Barbecue in Owensboro, any other barbecue place, one of the things they might have on the menu is mutton. And mutton is going to be those aged ewes, those ones that have the big spaces between their teeth, that have reached their productivity on the farm, and are being processed. So their muscle is not going to be as tasty, and that's why we might choose to barbecue them, because we can smoke them, slow roast them, and really loosen up that muscle fiber. The nice thing, and I talked about this when we first started the sheep unit, is that lambs mature quickly. For someone from a production side who wants, some closure within the operation in a year, we can have this animal be bred. The ewe is going to carry that fetus for 5 months. She will lamb. She'll raise that lamb until weaning age, which is about 60 to 80 pounds. Can be bigger, could be smaller. And then those lambs are then processed and ready for market at about 120 pounds. So, very, very fast we can have these lambs turn around. And within, 4 months to 8 months, lambs are ready for processing. So the whole thing can be done in about a year. And from a production standpoint, that's really nice, because, you're feeding these animals and then you get a paycheck. With cattle, it's much slower. So you have a lot of money hanging out there before you actually see any payoff. This is what we call a feeder lamb operation. So once the lambs are weaned, if that they're not yet at that 120 pound point, we're probably going to have to feed them for 30 to 40 days in a pen, and that feed ration is probably going to be high concentrate. We'll also give them some hay at that point as well. There are a lot of ranchers out west that raise sheep on the range, like we might see cattle ranches. My wife's uncles were actually big range sheep farmers, and it's really cool to see. You've got hundreds of ewes out there, and then their lambs. You can have almost 1,000 sheep pretty easily. And we'll watch about 4 or 5 minutes of this video clip this morning and wrap up here. How sheep are raised on the range.
Fat lambs and beautiful. You've seen them up there. Yeah. They're going on that truck, and it's just fat lambs and beautiful. You've seen them up there. Yeah. They're going on that truck, and it's just, God, it just swells you up for another go.
In this story on sheep ranching in Idaho, we're going to follow a year in the life of the sheep. Lambing begins at the Schertz Ranch in Wilder in January. This is when ewes give birth to the lambs in the first 3 months of the year. It's a busy time.
Well, this is what we call the night crowd. We bring the ewes in here before they give birth, and as they lamb, the guys, they take them into the shed, and they'll take care of them all night long. In the cold weather, it's very vital to get them out of here fast. One of the guys down here see what kind of milk they have, and that decides how many lambs we put on them. We put 1 lamb or 2 lambs. A lot of you have triplets, but we only leave them 2 lambs. And every day we haul them out in groups. They're all coated, number branded. Every band's got a different color of paint on it. And every morning we're rolling these lambs, using lambs out of here. And then these pens are all cleaned like they was 100 years ago with a wheelbarrow and a pitchfork. When we're really lambing 250 ewes or to 300 a day.
The lambs and ewes are put into pens with clean, fresh straw next to the lambing shed, where the lambs acclimate to their new life.
These lambs here come out of the shed this morning. It was probably born the day before yesterday. And we can see the numbers. The mother's branded with the same. These are all twins here. And the mother, like they're 263, the mother's 263. So, and all down this line, they've been branded, numbered along until we get a full band again.
Frank says it's best to let the lambs feed with their mothers in a small group setting with plenty of space for best survival.
The slower you can go with these twins, the better.
After several days, the crew moves the ewes and lambs into a larger pen with twice as many animals. 3 days later, they'll move into a pen with triple the number of ewes and their lambs. This procedure gets the animals used to being part of larger groups. Eventually, they form a full band of sheep, or about 2,400 ewes and lambs.
That's why it's so much work. You know, we got pens here probably for 3,000 head of ewes. But once you hit that end of that line, the sheep out in the front got to be moved, and you got to work clear back to every day. Of course, they come out here, but you got to work clear back. So we got room. We always want room for the next day's lambs coming out. So they got to move and move and move. And I mean, you move a lot of sheep.
Schertz employs 25 Peruvian sheep herders year-round to take care of his sheep. The men who work during the lambing process are the same guys who herd the sheep through the mountains in the summer. Lambing takes about 3 to 4 months to complete. Once they're done, the crews clean up the corrals and get their gear ready for spring turnout.
We clean all these pens, tarps off the sheds, and then the boys will get the pack strings ready and the horses and mules, and by then it'll be time to go. Which the Black Canyon they call allotment that herder knows.
The herders carry a wall tent and camp supplies on pack mules and horses, moving the camp every day or so as the sheep move through the country.
I run pack strings in the mountains. Probably 80% of sheep outfits in America, and maybe 90, only they run one man to the camp. But I run too because I'm in this rough wolf inhabited country.
Each band is also accompanied by 2 Great Pyrenees guard dogs to help keep predators at bay. Frank's sheep arrive at the Boise foothills in mid-April, just as the foothills are greening up. Schertz trucks the sheep to a variety of drop-off points to keep the bands spread out, including popular trailheads such as the Corrals Trailhead and Hull's Gulch. These trailheads have lots of recreation traffic, so the Idaho Rangeland Resource Commission puts the word out in local news media and recreation websites to give hikers, bikers, runners, and dog walkers a heads up when the sheep are entering the foothills, and how to coexist and interact with the sheep and guard dogs. 2 key things to remember are keeping dogs on a leash and getting off your bike and walking through sheep herds to avoid antagonism.
Guys, I'm going to stop that there. If you're interested, though, you can see this video is called A Year in the Life of Raising Sheep in Idaho. It's about half an hour long and really informative, pretty cool how they go through the entire process. And I would highly recommend taking a look at it. But again, something to do on your own. What I've wanted to show you is that lambing process. I mean, we're talking 3,000 ewes, and forming new bands. And when you have that many sheep, it can be profitable, but it takes land to set that up. It takes money to buy that many sheep. He employs 25 people a year. They need to be paid. So, it's a dilemma like we see in a lot of sectors of agriculture is how can you make a profit? I'm going to post some questions on the Google site. Just answer those to wrap up this unit, and then we will we'll do a full wrap up early next week. Have a great weekend, guys. Know that I think about you every day, and I'm missing you all, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.